Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this very interesting topic around intelligent network rollouts, unleashing autonomous networks through AI. I have a very esteemed panel from different time zones who have agreed to be part of this panel and also share their views. Advancements in connectivity, connected technologies, and infrastructure improves functionality and performance, but also brings with it a fair degree of network complexity. Business customers demand connectivity, superior speed, and performance. Operators, on the other hand, expect ease in configuration, ease in monitoring, maintenance, and over and above that, a fair degree of intelligence so that they can take decisions for their end customers. AI and machine learning is transforming the way operators and service providers are approaching this problem statement. Global demand for global growth rate on network automation has been in the range of 13% in 2020, is expected to be in the range of 13% in 2022. AI as an industry is expected to add nearly 13 trillion to the global economy. GSMA has estimated that 80% of the mobile networks will be not only be intelligent, but also contribute to reducing OPEX over a period of time. A survey done by TM Forum in 2020 estimated that most operators expect intelligent networks to provide 50% gain in efficiency. So the focus is towards everything to get to a net zero. Net zero, not only in terms of net zero weight, zero touch, zero trouble, and along with that, superior experience. To discuss all this with us today is an esteemed panel, and I have with me today from Intel, Mr. Rajesh Gadiyar, from Red Hat, Mr. Ian Hood, from Capgemini, Mr. Shamik Mishra, and from Ericsson, Mr. Igor Maurell. All of them are stalwarts in their respective industries and are contributing immensely to this advancement in intelligence and networks. To start with, I will request Mr. Rajesh Gadiyar to give his point of view on how intelligent networks and AI are transforming the way customers are seeing and benefiting from this transformation. Rajesh, I'll first start with you. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everyone. And Puru, thank you for the opportunity to be on this great panel. It's a real pleasure to be partnering with all of you for this important discussion on AI in networking. Now, as you know, Intel has been a pioneer in network virtualization, and over the last decade, we've worked with the rest of the telco ecosystem to deliver the TCO benefits of standard high-volume server platforms to build network applications. I have personally driven the vision of a standard CORD server platform as a best-in-class network applications platform. Now, as a result, we've seen a dramatic change in how networks are deployed. The hardware-software disaggregation has driven faster innovation cycles and opened up the ecosystem with many new entrants. The next phase of networking is all about cloud-native transformation and adoption of cloud practices such as microservices as the deployment model and continuous integration, continuous deployment for driving the cloud scale and faster innovation cycles. Now, in spite of the pandemic, we've made great progress in 5G deployments through 2021, and we're seeing tremendous interest in edge computing and multi-edge, multi-cloud deployment models. Now, as the complexity of infrastructure grows, and there is a need to deliver performance, security, end-to-end quality of service for 5G network slices with virtualization and multi-tenancy, automation of network infrastructure is becoming a critical requirement. The complexity of 5G networks and distributed computing at the edge do not allow a static policy-based orchestration and management like we've done in the past. So rolling a truck with technicians every time you want to bring up a new service or every time you have a problem is simply inefficient, and it has a direct impact on business. So what is required is the ability to automate the network utilizing predictive AI-driven approaches that drive closed-loop behavior and make the network run like an autonomous vehicle. So at Intel, we are focused on three key elements to drive this AI-driven closed-loop automation. First, it is about platform telemetry, covering metrics, logs, and events to create efficient data lakes. Second, it's about AI models and real-time inferencing on these data lakes for prediction. And third, it's about automation by tying the real-time inferencing with orchestration, such as service orchestrators and resource orchestrators. So beyond this, let me also give you, talking about opportunities, a few other examples of AI use cases in telco where I've seen a significant interest. And we've been actually working with operators and others in the software ecosystem to realize the business value. So in 5G RAN, for example, with the ORAN efforts to standardize the architecture and interfaces, we are seeing tremendous interest in RAN intelligent controllers, or RIC, both real-time and non-real-time RICs. This is an awesome opportunity to utilize AI to deliver spectral efficiencies, MIMO optimizations, and match scheduler optimizations. And these are all so critical for all the new use cases, such as URLLC and massive machine-to-machine communications, in addition to the traditional mobile broadband. We are also seeing interest in addressing network security, so intrusion detection and prevention, and more importantly, layer 4 to layer 7 application identification as key AI use cases at the network edge. Another use case that's driving efficient energy management utilizing the telemetry data from the infrastructure. So when the platform is running at lower capacity, you can run the platform at a lower frequency and save energy, and you can automate all this using AI and time series traffic data. So overall, as you can see, AI is going to play a very significant role in increasing the resiliency of network applications and delivering massive at-scale end-to-end automation.
Thank you, Rajesh. That was extremely insightful. I'll move on to Igor. Igor, with 1 billion IoT devices being already connected, 5G expected to add another 2.6 billion subscribers, and more than 65% of the world's data is going to be governed through 5G. Can we start with your perspective on how intelligent networks are going to transform and support the increasing demand of not only operators but the end consumers as well? And how do you see this unfold?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here in this distinguished panel. It's a great pleasure to share our thoughts, and taking on your comments, Pram, I would say if we look at the rapid acceleration of 5G, based on our latest mobility report, what we have seen is that the adoption rate has surpassed any estimation we have done before. We are expecting at the end of this year to reach over 660 million subscriptions across the world. And we're seeing that when it comes to adoption rate versus any other technology like LTE is twice as fast to actually get over the 1 billion subscriptions. So coming to your point, 5G is moving really fast. It's creating a platform to bring together the ecosystem, and that brings immense amount of data, but also something very important. The networks of today and the networks of the future are going to be multi-service. So it's not only about the mobile broadband, as you refer to, like today, but it's also about bringing new services to different industries and new services to consumers. So it becomes critical and it becomes a necessity to add intelligence in the entire value chain. So intelligence that needs to be built into the products and solutions, intelligence that needs to come into the network operations and in the way we actually handle the entire chain. So the networks of the future has to be programmable, because we need to be dynamically able to provide the capacity and the resources that the consumers and the enterprises will demand. It has to be reliable, what we call always on. It has to be secure, but at the same time, it needs to be sustainable. We're adding a lot of equipment, data centers, we're adding a lot of technology all together. How we do that, what we create a greener world. So for us, the foundation comes in first, what we call intent-based networks. So we're moving from hard-coded algorithms into actually machine reasoning. We're bringing disruptive technologies that we build in our solutions that allow the system to learn on their own. And we're going to be designing the networks based on purpose. What is the outcome, the business outcome? And that will be translated into technology. This is what we call the closest to zero-touch networks. And in that journey, there are three main components: your onboarding, your handling, and your actuation. So the systems are going to actually perform the tasks. The other component already touched is the energy, quite important. We have something that we call the breaking the energy curve. Basically is how you provide increased performance to networks. And we're able to do between 20 to 25 improvements in customer experience while we reduce the consumption. And then for security, I would make here a call for action, because security is not only about products and solutions, it's about the public-private sector together with governments and academia coming together so that we design these networks with security at the center. And the reason being is because they become critical nation infrastructure. So all in all, what we need to make sure that we make this possible is acceleration of the ecosystem. And I think all of us in this panel here, joining forces, collaboration, bringing the R&D close to where the consumers and the enterprises are is quite critical, because now we need to build use cases. Those use cases don't happen in labs. Those use cases really happen when the consumers and the enterprises are building those use cases and then learning and bringing that knowledge around the world to the different places to accelerate. And then, of course, the learning and the capabilities that come with that. We need to completely reskill and change the capabilities that we have in our organization to secure what we call bringing machine and humans together to create a very powerful, a better world.
Thank you, Igor. I think you covered very, very important points around programmable intelligent networks. And I'd like to bring in Ian from Red Hat at this point in time to cover, when it comes to networks and network technologies and the use of AI and ML. There's a lot of expectations from not only operators but also the different ecosystem partners to bring in operational agility in not only configuration, maintaining, and monitoring of networks. So can you share your experience on the use of AI and ML in actually transforming the networks and bring in, as we all are calling, intelligence, and as Igor rightly put it, intent of the providers in the network? Ian, your point of view.
Thanks, Puru, and thanks for inviting me to join this panel this evening for me. And as many of you know, working with the partners on this panel and others, Red Hat is really focused on delivering open source platforms that enable the efficient delivery of these 5G core RAN networks, as well as the private 5G and enterprise services. And we work with a lot of our partners on the hardware networking integration, and really it's about delivering an end-to-end capability. And as has been mentioned, we're rolling towards 1 billion subscribers on the 5G side, but we can't forget that we've already got billions of subscribers on the LT side part of this. And so with that said, it's really about what we call hyper automation is really a key to survival for every industry, and even more so with the mobile operators. And what I mean by that is that it's automating as many business and IT and OT processes as possible, using many technologies, tools, platforms, and analyzing these in many network services, security, business application processes, and take advantage of that. And if we look at this in practice, we've talked about the scale of 5G and edge. We're already working together with our partners to provide a secure zero-touch provisioning approach. It's based on Kubernetes management, a well-known tool known as Ansible automation, but also bringing in GitOps, which leads back to what Rajesh talked about, which was applying CI/CD to the network deployment and configurations, similar to the way that we've done it for cloud-native application development, right? So we're kind of taking what we know well, but if we look at it from an AI perspective, right, what we're doing is and actually the way we like to term it, it's really human-enhanced machine learning, right? Because we still need the humans to kind of help drive these algorithms as they come out, to figure that they're also from an industry perspective being an ethical use of AI, right? So the human's still kind of a necessary piece. But what we look at is we're applying this type of software tooling and data integration, right? It's really all about the data. And there's really 3 applications or key areas in which this is being applied. One is the one what most people are talking about, which is using the data from the network and the environment to improve the efficiency, capacity, and deployment speed of the network. But there's another area, which is how do we improve the customer experience in all aspects, not just their call qualities and how they make their calls and roaming and all that good stuff, but when they actually call into the back office systems, the billing, all that thing, use AI for that purpose to look at, the offers that are out there, what's the billing look like, what's the pricing look like, and change things on the fly. And now, most importantly, it's really not a benefit directly, to the operator, but it, brings him the business. It's providing that AI data integration as a service for those enterprise edge applications, to a factory, to an automotive company like BMW or Porsche, the healthcare industry, taking that data from them and applying that as a service and bringing those algorithms and capabilities to them as a service. So it's no longer just network as a service. And if you sort of think about it from a high level perspective, what we're really doing is we're aggregating and sifting through either the operator data or the enterprise data, and we're becoming the brain effectively that recognizes the patterns within it to make recommendations for actions and then automation of those things. And that way it can actually minimize and do preemptive handling of outages, capacity adjustments, and accelerating new services. So really this is how we as an industry need to sort of take these capabilities, work together, make sure we take that zero trust security into mind. We design it in from the beginning and make sure that we can actually intelligently automate these things together to drive the innovation, because it's really about accelerating the innovation of services and capabilities where that data needs to be handled and make it happen on any footprint, whether it's on premise or, as we all know, in the various public clouds, as long as we properly secure those. So that's kind of what we had to share in this kind of comment to the team. And back to you, Paruk.
Thanks, Ian. Shamik, if I could bring you here, Ian spoke about transforming the way you rethink about entire technology architecture, and also configuring it in a manner that will not only improve speed but also improves customer experience. From your perspective and the work that you have been doing with your customers, would you like to share your views on not only the topic of intelligent networks, but also some examples around how you see, the entire future of intelligent networks transforming for the betterment of the customer?
Sure. Thanks, Puru. And first of all, thanks for inviting me to this. Uh, and great insights provided already by the panelists before me. But in general, if we look at the autonomous networks, we first have to look at the need of the autonomous network in principle. As as Rajesh was mentioning, the scale of the 5G or even the existing 4G networks is continuously increasing. There are more and more edge networks getting deployed. There are massive number of devices that are getting connected. So it's practically impossible. At some point, it would be impossible to manage this network all through manual models or through policy-based systems. So the need for autonomous network, I think there's no debate about that. It's very much required. The question is, how do we implement such autonomous networks? And as a global system integrator, one of our prime work is to ensure that such networks are built and integrated and managed. Now, there are three parts to it. One part, of course, is that how do we deploy the networks? And Igor definitely made a great point about intent-based networks. I think that's the best way forward. But the other aspect is about the visibility of the network itself. I mean, there is a certain level of visibility that is available today, but that may not be enough to build a truly autonomous network. And when I say that, what I mean is that we need to collect enough data to build AI models, which we do as Capgemini. We are building these autonomous network applications and models to figure out how the network is behaving in a span of time, and then try and take a snapshot of the network and try to emulate that over a period of time. Now, for that, a lot of data is required. And the data cannot be collected just by itself. So the network equipment has to be open enough to share certain data out of their telemetry interfaces. The network equipment has to also provide interfaces through which we can reconfigure the network if the need be. There has to be a certain way of collecting and warehousing the data, which needs to be utilized for a long period of time. So the whole ecosystem, the best of practice ecosystems that we see in enterprises, if that has to come to telco networks, then definitely there is still some work to do. Having said that, we in Capgemini, we are working quite heavily in the autonomous networks in two aspects. One, in the core network side, where we are looking to build the network analytics functions by collecting different kinds of data from the network and providing insights to the operator or enterprise on what their network is really like. And more importantly, also look at the radio network side as well. And so we are quite uh, deeply invested in the ORAN or Open RAN model, and we have worked quite extensively, in fact, both with Red Hat and with Intel on this part. We recently did a project together with Intel called Marconi, where we actually demonstrated that through open networks and through intelligent networks, we can actually improve the spectral efficiencies and the energy efficiencies of base stations, which was quite a revelation, given that this was done entirely on a software. So it was not we were not changing anything. We were not really looking to change the hardware configuration at all. And at the same time, we are also looking to implement autonomous network models on the core network side. And we worked recently with Ericsson for a proof of concept that we did in south of Europe to show how network exposure functions and the data that can be collected from the core network can be utilized for better management of the network and providing better quality of experience to the end user. So in general, autonomous network is a great thing, but a word of caution, it is a big thing. And in order to solve large things, we need the industry to come together, to collaborate and ensure that there is a common base platform to drive such innovation. And that's why I think we are all here in the first place.
Thank you, Shamik. I think you made a very, very important point about, to build AI models, you need to make the data visible enough and secure enough in a manner that will help see the results of the models being transformed. And that brings me to the point around heterogeneous networks and the heterogeneous ecosystem that we are all working towards. Rajesh, if I could come to you and, as an add-on and a follow-on to, the wonderful foundation that all four of you have actually laid down to this entire discussion and the opportunity that it lays down. So 5G intelligent networks has great potential. We've all established this in our first round of discussion. But it also brings with it fair degree of complexity around management of networks. Operators want better visibility, and you are actually seeing results coming in, provided that you work in the ecosystem. So can you share some examples on how are you enabling not only operators and also now with enterprises coming in, private networks, and probably the larger ecosystem to cohesively work together and bring a better management to the entire deployment. Rajesh?
Yeah, so that's a great multi-part question. So I'm going to take a stab at it, and then I'm sure actually there will be more thoughts on that from the other panel members. But just to take a step back, right? So 5G is a significant transition, and it delivers more than any previous generation: more speed, lower latency, and new mechanisms such as network slicing that allows us to guarantee the end-to-end quality of service. I think we talked about the use of unlicensed spectrum that allows enterprises such as in industrial and factory deployments to set up private 5G networks. 5G is truly game-changing. But there's also, like you said, a fair bit of complexity in planning, designing, optimizing, and deploying services in a 5G network. Now, carriers and their services partners will experience a challenging, but in my view, ultimately a virtuous cycle. The more they take advantage of 5G's performance improvements and flexibility to address new use cases and improve service, the more they will need to optimize the networks and fine-tune their network management. So service and slice creation will be the foundation for a host of innovative 5G applications in the enterprise market. Operators will therefore require agile development techniques and likely an extensive partner ecosystem, as well as the tools and expertise to manage it. So optimization of a 5G network requires much more dynamic, even continuous adjustments as traffic patterns change, even over the course of a single day many a times. Now, all this complexity can be managed, but the operators must incorporate automation and AI as key tenants to keep up with the experience demands that are posed by 5G's new infrastructure and services. So AI-enabled automation will be the only way, in my mind, to deal with the changing needs of a 5G network. So to your other question around how AI and ML is expected to enhance the operational agility in terms of configuring, managing, and monitoring networks, I want to actually give you a couple of examples, right? So if you think about planning and designing networks, AI can really help operators to enhance their network design for enabling better capacity and throughput prediction for short-term and long-term needs of their consumer base. So utilizing trained models with time series data and a recommendation engine, AI can help in predicting the traffic trends and behavioral flows of telco consumers through AI-based analytics solutions, and then better understand on how to optimize networks to give best quality of experience to their users. Another example on network operations side of things, from reporting of problems to responding to events and incidents that happen, AI-driven tools for network operations assist network engineers automate and streamline network activities and incidents management. So AI ops is the next level of automation with intelligent 5G. So when cellular networks meet artificial intelligence and aim at empowering like software tools to take quick actions and respond immediately, enabling predictive maintenance for any operational events or incidents and security issues without any human intervention. So today we react to these situations, and the opportunity in front of it is, as a result of this automation, how can we actually drive to a more predictive behavior? And that's going to be at the core of how we make the network infrastructure really autonomous from an end-to-end perspective.
Thanks, Rajesh. I think you covered multiple topics and responded extremely well. But I'll bring in Ian in. In fact, I wanted to bring in Ian in one point later. But since Rajesh alluded to the point on AI ops, I'd like to bring Ian in from his perspective on the role of service orchestration, the role that AI ops is going to play in the years to come in transforming and managing the network more intelligently. Ian, you raised your hand as well, but I would like you to cover the point on AI ops as well. And
yeah, just to follow on kind of Rajesh's comments, and wanted to kind of cover a couple of things there as it relates to the automation and orchestration pieces that are necessary, and how we're trying to make this complex challenge, a bit easier. We're working together with Intel on a way to actually have common, language and operators and AI technologies using APIs to actually drive to the actual hardware. There's open source projects called Openness on that for the hardware side, but it's about having a consistent way to actually do lifecycle management of the entire deployment. So that's one of the points I wanted to make on how we can standardize this and have common ways to do things that make it easier for us to handle this complexity. But in terms of bringing in the AI ops side of things, there's already examples in the industry with our customers where they have either taken advantage of building an AI model, and they've actually basically done a query approach to the radio management channels to their radios, and are retuning the radios and capacity on the fly with that kind of a model. That's already in play today with LTE, before we even get to 5G. So these techniques are already in play, and we have other ones who are taking that same sort of approach and using what's known as a pub sub bus model to actually pull the information from their network, virtual, physical, et cetera, and using that to actually redeploy and provision the network on the fly. So we already have customers, in multiple countries that are using these technologies, today. But one of the comments on AI ops is that while we do have, many tools that you can have an operator say, go push this button, execute a script, execute an Ansible, playbook on the fly, we want to be able to actually collect the data, and the right amount of data, from everything from servers, network elements, processes, whatever, to determine that something's actually not like I expect it to be, and then I can recover from it before I actually get into a problem. Because just in the case of the authentication time, right? Well, when every new version of iPhone comes out, right, everybody's scrambling to get all of those sales. And as part of that process, the operators have to authenticate the users to actually get to go buy these things. So if the systems that have really not a whole lot to do with the actual end-to-end, networking, that are doing the authentication of the subscribers go out, that's a serious, loss of revenue to the customer. And so this is an area where we've been spending time with them to work on how do I automate that process, make sure that there's zero outage in this process of doing this authentication. So it's in all aspects that you can take these types of models and, as I said, build that brain to make recommendations on whether it's capacity planning that Rajesh mentioned, whether it's the tuning of the radios in terms of capacity and spectrum, and whether it's actual, is the secure authentication going as well as I expect it to keep up with the demands? And then even more so, can I bring out a new service quicker? And especially these enterprise services to the factories and those places, I need to take and enable the customer to take his data, whether it's healthcare data, automotive data, financial data, and apply algorithms as a service to him, so he doesn't have to go get the data scientist to go do it himself. Right. So this is kind of the other area that AI ops brings many opportunities to reduce that complexity, if you will.
Thanks, Ian. Igor, if I could come to you, we've spoken a lot about network complexity. We covered AI ops, but one thing that is very important in a multi-partner ecosystem is what kind of consistency in terms of quality, security that the partners can cohesively deliver. And that's where open standards, actually open and standards for based ecosystem actually comes in. And this is a topic that is evolving. It is very specifically being adopted by country. Can you share your experience in terms of when it comes to open standards and how that is being deployed in a cohesive ecosystem? What have been your experiences, and how can this be improved over a period of time?
Yeah, absolutely, and very relevant point in the discussion. But I would say we truly believe in standardization. We are at the forefront of when it comes to 3GPP. We are active members, and we embrace openness on the new architecture, not only on the core side of things, but also in the RAN side. So then, being said that, the important is that the collaboration and the close cooperation, as we said, among all the different players, because things are moving really, really fast. So we need to have that collaboration and that coordination to make sure that we bring what really is required to meet the demand. That's number one. But the other aspect is when we build products, when we build solutions, they need to be more and more multi-vendor. That's what it is. So in one side that we have agreements in terms of how we're going to talk to each other, what are the type of protocols that we're going to use. But that ability to be able to somehow isolate from the underlying layer and the virtualization, that is a fundamental piece. I just comment here referring to what Ian and Rajesh were mentioning. So now when it comes to orchestration and when it comes to service management, it's fundamental that we understand all those interfaces at the low level, at the mid levels, to make sure that we are able to bring those services fast to market. And that is precisely what we have announced. If I just put example a week ago in what we call our intelligent automation platform, what we're saying there is we bring all together as long as we speak the same language, put it that way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open up that for APIs and developers to make sure that they can build those services. So that is our approach. Then when it comes to the radio side of things, we refer to disaggregation between the compute and the radio units. The first steps are being made. So we're moving into virtualization of that space. We're moving into cloudification. And with that, then the next step will come. So to wrap up, I would say, number one, the collaboration is fundamental. Continue driving the standards, being part of the work groups globally to make sure that we collaborate and we get things together. And then that we look at the networks now as platforms. platforms of innovation. So meaning that what we're doing here is bringing, I call it an universal fabric of connectivity. When application developers, when communication service providers, enterprises are gonna come and gonna start building new functions. And those functions need to be such that can be ported, irrespective of what is the underlying network. So whether it's the hardware, whether are the different functions, so that we can accelerate the actual development of the ecosystem. So that's where we are. And when we take that all the way from the way you plan, the way you design, the way you implement, we mentioned here operate, but also we need to look at the way we optimize and the way we support those networks. So all the entire value chain has to change. And the other key components, the intelligence, is not only in the outside. Today, a lot of the intelligence, we talk about tools. The future should be that a lot of the intelligence come in, built in the solutions. That's what we need to do as a step one. And then we have some other applications that will complement. So that evolution needs to happen considering the progression that we have.
Thank you, Igor. Shamik, if I can just move to you. From a, there's a lot of discussion around building AI models and the role of analytics and insights that are being played by service providers like yourself in this domain. Can you share some examples on how these kind of how analytics is actually transforming the way decisions are being taken by enterprises? What is the role that organizations like yourself are playing and transforming, and where do you see insight-driven decision making to go to the next level? We spoke about manual involvement. Everything cannot be autonomous. There is going to be fair amount of insights and decision making where there will be human touch also involved. So where do you see this going, and how can this be more structured so that better decisions can be taken by the operators?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks, Pur, for asking that. I think one of the key areas that we need to think through is what are the real takeaways from this discussion. So if you look at one of the major aspects of an automated network is to have cross-domain, have closed-loop automation where enterprises or operators can optimize their network performance end to end, right, from device up to the network. Also, this means that this requires networks to be a little more software driven. They need to be augmented with machine learning. They need to be using more data and intent-based networks. It also needs to keep in mind how the network would behave based on end user behavior or based on operator behavior, based on events like a security event, for example. And all of this results into the better observability of the network through insights and analytics. So if we look at from an end-to-end perspective, there are several use cases that we are working together with network equipment providers and operators. We are working in building these AI models. One of them that we are quite busy with these days is to ensure that how we convert the network into a platform, as Igor was mentioning. How do we make the network into a platform means how do we actually create granular APIs so that individual resources and applications can be utilized on top of a network. And in order to do that, we have to collect data. B, we have to create use cases. And these use cases could be, for example, traffic steering. So how do we do a traffic management in radio network and core network with defined intents and policies and configuration? Also, we need to work on connection managers. So how do we have data-driven connection management for better load balancing in the network? So that's another major use case, early use case that needs to be done to ensure that the network works like a platform. Energy saving is becoming a very important area in terms of AI-based applications, like how to dynamically optimize cells across different power and capacity models. Sleeping cell detection. We who have been in the wireless domain for years, we know that's one of the biggest problems that any operations guys, it would be a nightmare for any operations guys to how do we predict sleeping cells and raise alarms. How do we ensure that there is dynamic transmit power optimizations? So these are some of the very specific network applications. Then there is security events and security anomalies that can be utilized or identified using AI ops. There are also work that we are doing in terms of trying to analyze how the network will behave under different circumstances. For example, during an event, or if the network or multiple operators are deployed on a neutral host, or in a private network, say inside a manufacturing plant, if a certain type of use case is implemented, then what kind of network behavior is expected and how do we predict that? So all of this actually brings together quite a dynamic ecosystem today. It also means that it's not just companies like us or network equipment providers are working on this. It's a whole new ISV ecosystem. A developer ecosystem is getting created who are getting more interested in building the network or leveraging the network to build interesting use cases. We, as I think, as a community, we should be able to encourage this developer ecosystem to look at network deeply so that new innovation can come in, not just from us telecommunication community, but from outside as well.
Thank you, Shamik. I think that was very insightful. We are drawing very close to our timeline. I just have one request from each one of you, starting with Rajesh, then Ian, then Igor, and then finally Shamik. On your closing thoughts, what are the just number one priority that you have when it comes to the future of intelligent networks and deployment? And how do you see this transforming in the next 1 year when hopefully I will have the same panel in a year's time for IMC? And what do you see that as a vision for the next 1 year? Just one priority for you.
Yeah,
as your
I mean,
closing
I can
remarks.
start. First of all, actually, very insightful thoughts from everybody here, right? So it's been great actually just participating in this discussion. If you ask me for one priority, I would actually point out automation, right? Automation was actually a key tenet of what network virtualization or NFV was supposed to have delivered, but I think we've been behind the curve on that. And my hope is as we actually transition to more cloud native practices, um, I think there is a real opportunity to drive massive at scale automation. And that's going to be very critical for us um, to realize the full potential of 5G and to really disaggregate applications and drive edge computing in a meaningful fashion. Because I think if you sort of like look at the new age applications, I think Shamik was making a reference to private wireless, which is going to be a big thing. Um, these are all actually going to require massive at scale automation because it's not just about what runs at the edge, whether it's an on-prem edge or network edge, but the likely scenarios that will emerge in 3, 4, 5 years is how applications get deployed across multiple edge clusters and perhaps across edge and multi-cloud deployment models. And so all of that is going to be at the heart of it, it's going to be automation. So for me, actually, that's where I'm going to actually put a lot of emphasis and focus on and get that right, because I think if you sort of like have really good automation in place, I think you have the opportunity to drive a composable, heterogeneous, and intelligent network that can deploy sort of like overlay network functions along with services and can help telcos really get to sort of like the pain points that they have, being able to monetize the network infrastructure better.
Thank you, Rajesh. Ian, if I could request you,
Certainly. So,
one priority.
so much of knowledge that the network automation is really important. My focus is actually on the data, and that's because the data is kind of really where the information that's important to both the operator for his own purposes, but also to the customer. So we need to kind of make it so we can build these networks and develop and deploy these applications, be they network functions, be they IT functions, be they and enterprise functions. But we got to be able to actually take that data that we need that's coming out of these applications and apply the appropriate data integration to it, analytics, apply models to it to actually deliver the business value and have empathy for what that customer is really trying to do, whether it's an energy company, an auto company, whether it's healthcare, in the areas of the people that are actually doing research on whether it's COVID, brain and mental health, that data is really kind of the key thing. So for me, it's about making sure that we can embrace the ability to properly apply that intelligence to the data independently of what we're doing within the network, and do that in such a way that it is, making it available to, pretty much all walks of life and any industry.
Thanks, Igor. We covered automation, we covered data and data intelligence. What's your priority?
Yeah, so if we have automation and we have data, we need capabilities and we need change management. So once we have the data, once we have the applications, we need to create new operating models. How are we going to do things differently? And that a key component is having the right capabilities, competence in the people, because they're going to be transforming from where they are today. But at the same time, how we change, how we think, how we act, how we do things. And that is the change management. And that is the fundamental in this journey. We can have the best technology, but if we don't truly change how we do things, we're not going to get to the next level. So I'll put it there. Let's focus then also on the people and the change so that we can unleash the value of automation and data for our
Thank you.
customers.
Shamik, your closing thoughts. We have three ideas already. Your
The
priority.
good part of being the last speaker is that I can always say all the above, right?
Yeah, of course, it's all there. That's for me. I'm the last speaker.
Yeah, but just to add to what you guys already have added, the one additional thing I guess is to increase the interest of application developers about networks. I mean, application developers today love the cloud. I mean, if you give them a choice, where would you want to deploy an application, they would always say the cloud. If they have to come to the edge, if they have to come to an operator network, they would want to understand what the network really gives them in addition to what they get it already on the cloud. So whether it's network insights, whether it is additional network capabilities or exposure of network capabilities, can they, for example, dynamically figure out how the network is performing? Can they actually look at the network through other visibility tools and APIs? So making the network more accessible to average application developers who may not be a network expert is critical. And now whatever these gentlemen has said earlier, all of them actually is important to make that possible. We need automation, we need the ability to collect data, we need a different kind of mindset and operating model so that application developers can innovate on the network. To me, we are trying to look at a scenario where network is indeed a platform, as Igor mentioned, and not just a pipe, which is very hard to understand, and only very few technology experts understands it. We need to move from there and make it more of a platform so that we can innovate on top of it. That's, I think, would be the priority for most of us.
Thank you, Shamik. I think we had a very interesting panel. We covered topics around how the future is going to be envisaged in terms of edge computing, distributed computing, dynamic policy management. We spoke about agile architecture. We spoke about giving visibility to the networks. We spoke about bringing in intelligence and intent into the entire ecosystem. We also spoke about how to create a platform, the need for creating of a platform, a common fabric for connectivity. And finally, I think the four priorities that our esteemed panelists have summed up, which is to bring in the importance of automation and how to make it successful, the importance of data and data intelligence to make it more mature for decision making, to bring in better capability in people to actually create this entire ecosystem and also work cohesively and also build the models that we actually talk about, and also a very fungible operating model. And finally, the most important one is around bringing in a lot of awareness of what is actually there. How can we make not only the ecosystem aware, operators aware, the end customers aware of what is the art of the possible. I think with that, I mean, it's been a real pleasure and honor to actually be moderating this panel. And thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you and have a very nice day. Looking forward to more such intellectual and knowledge sharing sessions going forward as well. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Happy
Thank you.
10th India
Thank you
Mobile
for having
Congress. Bye.
Thank you.